shadow.
Subscribe if you find comfort in uncomfortable truths. But save that click for the final frame. Tonight, we offer something more precious and perilous. The key to a door you cannot close once opened. The promise is simple and unkind. We will trace the thread that Howard Phillips Lovecraft wound through ink and insomnia, a thread that unspools into the dark theater of an indifferent universe. The cost is printed clearly on the ticket. Knowledge arrives as both key and gate, veil and void. You come seeking to understand, and in understanding, you discover the ideas come to understand you. What does it mean to be insignificant in a cosmos without audience? Not humiliation, not melodrama, simply scale and structure. Distances measured in star frost, times counted in dead oceans, minds like match flames inside fog. Lovecraft's project, beneath the tentacular caricatures and pulp magazine borders, was the systematic unseating of the human as protagonist. The curtain lifts on a stage that never wanted actors. The ocean does not hate the candle it drowns. The void does not mock the echo it swallows. It does not notice. Picture a child in Providence, September 1890, standing before his grandfather's telescope. The boy peers into the autumn sky and sees not wonder, but the first crack in his anthropocentric shell. The sheer emptiness between stars becomes a revelation more terrifying than any monster, the recognition that consciousness itself might be nothing more than brief static in a cosmic radio that was never tuned to receive us. This moment would reshape not just horror literature, but our entire understanding of humanity's place in an indifferent cosmos. The telescope reveals what daylight mercifully conceals, the vast machinery of space operating without concern for the small lives that briefly flicker beneath it. Young Howard sees the Orion Nebula through that brass eyepiece and understands, with a terrible clarity that sometimes visits children, that the universe is not a home, but a house where no one invited us to stay. The stars arrange themselves in patterns that suggest meaning, but deliver none. They burn through nuclear fusion, not divine intention. They die in explosions that outshine galaxies, and their deathlight reaches us as beauty we mistake for blessing. This is the origin wound from which all cosmic horror flows. Not abuse or poverty or conventional trauma, but the specific injury of premature cosmic awareness. Most children can look at stars and see stories, wishes, navigation aids for earthly journeys. Lovecraft saw the cold mathematics of fusion and gravity, the indifferent physics that would continue operating long after every human story had been forgotten. He saw deep time, geological epochs stretching backward into an earth that predated consciousness, forward into futures where consciousness would be only a brief anomaly in the planet's biography. The revelation operates like surgery performed without anesthesia. The comfortable assumption that humanity matters in some ultimate sense is excised with surgical precision, leaving consciousness to confront its actual situation. Temporary arrangement of matter on a minor planet orbiting an ordinary star in an unremarkable galaxy, among billions of others. The wound never heals because the knowledge cannot be unknown. Once you have seen the true scale of indifference, every human concern becomes simultaneously precious and absurd. Precious because it matters to conscious beings, absurd because conscious beings are statistical noise in the cosmic symphony. You can hear the paper breathe. The old ink carries the same weight as dried blood. In the margin of a letter, a phrase recurs like a tide line: cosmic indifferentism. a doctrine without altar or mercy, gentler than it sounds because it frees you from the burden of cosmic destiny, harsher because your meanings, so carefully arranged like masks on a dressing table, are local weather in a desert of stone. This philosophy would ferment in Lovecraft's correspondence for decades, spreading through letters that functioned less like personal communication and more like philosophical contagion. He wrote to fellow travelers in the dark, Smith, Howard, Long, Derleth, sharing not just stories, but worldview, not just entertainment, but existential education. The mythos that emerged was less fictional universe than accurate description of humanity's actual cosmic situation, dressed in the language of pulp horror to make unbearable truths bearable enough to consume. We will map this desert through 11 stations of revelation, origin and definition, how a traumatized child's vision became universal law, transmission as contagion through correspondence and collaboration, the principle that acts on you while you imagine you act on it, case studies where the veil thins, ancient entities whose very existence rewrites the rules of significance. We will name the pantheon, then unname it, entities as principles, not characters. We will trace the scientific echoes that confirm his most extreme visions. We will end where we began, with a stage, a curtain, and the softest whisper of the audience that is not there. Listen for anchors to keep you steady, fog along a pier, cold stone lintels, the grit of salt on your lip, the wet breath of a well. Each will return when the abyss threatens to become only an idea. You will not be explained to. You will be enlisted. If you accept the price, if you keep the light low and your breath even, we will step from the foyer into the darkened auditorium and let the stage lights stay off forever. The roots of cosmic dread stretch deeper than one man's vision, drawing nourishment from a century of accumulating revelations that systematically dismantled humanity's special place in creation. Howard Phillips Lovecraft was less prophet than librarian, cataloging volumes of evidence that predated the species he wrote for. The lineage begins with his literary ancestors, Poe's rational investigations of the irrational, where madness emerged not from supernatural violation, but from logical conclusion. Dunsany's dream cities, where gods play games with mortal stakes, revealing human striving as entertainment for indifferent powers. Blackwood's woods that think, sentient landscapes that dwarfed and absorbed human consciousness like fog swallowing candle flame. Mason's hills that remember, ancient places holding secrets that predated human language and would outlast human memory. Each offered fragments of a grammar where human agency diminished and ancient powers stirred, where the comfortable assumption of centrality began to crack like ice under spring sun. But Lovecraft's true inheritance was scientific. The boy who stood before that telescope in 1890 was heir to a century of cosmic displacement, a relentless series of demotions that had been gathering momentum since the Renaissance. Copernicus had moved Earth from the center, relegating our world to orbital insignificance around an ordinary star. Darwin had moved humanity from special creation, revealing consciousness as one more accident in the blind lottery of natural selection. Geology spoke of deep time, millions, then billions of years that reduced human history to statistical noise in the planet's biography. The new astronomy revealed not just other worlds, but other galaxies, each a swirling congregation of hundreds of billions of stars that dwarfed our local concerns into mathematical irrelevance. Every discovery was a demotion, every revelation a step down from the pedestal of cosmic importance, every new map a larger auditorium with fewer occupied seats. Consider the progression that carved itself into his consciousness like water wearing stone. At 5 years old, the collapse of Santa Claus, not merely the end of childhood innocence, but his first encounter with the systematic unreliability of comforting narratives. The adults who had constructed this elaborate fiction revealed themselves as either deceived or deceivers, and young Howard learned that consensus reality could be provisional, temporary, subject to revision without warning or appeal. The gift-giver who watched and judged and rewarded dissolved into parental theater, leaving behind the uncomfortable recognition that other cherished beliefs might prove equally fragile. At 8, the orbital revelation struck with mathematical precision. Earth was not the center around which celestial bodies danced in cosmic homage, but one planet among others, circling an ordinary star that was itself unremarkable among billions. The sun that had seemed so obviously central, so clearly the focal point of universal attention, became merely local, a neighborhood lamp in a city of infinite streetlights. The boy who had imagined himself living at the universe's heart discovered he inhabited its suburbs, and not even the fashionable suburbs at that. At 12, the distances between stars entered his awareness like slow poison spreading through his conceptual bloodstream. Light itself, that fastest of all possible messengers, required years to traverse the spaces between our nearest neighbors. The galaxy stretched across distances so vast that human language possessed no adequate metaphors, no comfortable comparisons. If Earth vanished tomorrow, the nearest star would not learn of our absence for over 4 years. If that star replied immediately, we would not receive its message for another 4 years. Conversation across such distances became impossible. Community became inconceivable, and the mathematical probability of cosmic solitude settled into his bones like winter cold that never lifts. Each revelation stripped away another layer of human specialness, another reason to believe consciousness mattered in any universal sense. The comfortable assumption that humanity occupied a privileged position in cosmic hierarchy crumbled under the weight of accumulating evidence. We were not central, not specially created, not even particularly recent in the planet's biography. We were late arrivals to a party that had been running for billions of years without us, and would continue for billions more after our departure. The genius lay in synthesis. Where others saw scientific triumph in the march of human progress, Lovecraft perceived existential horror lurking in every equation. The telescope that revealed galactic majesty also revealed human minuteness with pitiless precision. The fossil record that demonstrated life's persistence also demonstrated its utter expendability. Entire species had flourished and vanished, leaving only traces in sedimentary layers, and most species left no traces at all. He conceived cosmicism as literature of proportion, where horror emerged not from supernatural violation, but from natural revelation, not from demons, but from decimals. His protagonists read too much, measure too well, sleep too little. They find maps with scales that refuse consolation, timelines like shorelines, where human history appears as foam on an infinite beach. The transmission began through correspondence, letters by the ream crossing the continent like fog rolling in over cold wharves. Clark Ashton Smith received detailed expositions on the meaninglessness of human endeavor wrapped in Baroque poetry. Robert E. Howard absorbed theories about civilization as temporary arrangement of matter destined for dissolution. Frank Belknap long stretched his nerves like violin strings under the tension of cosmic awareness. August Derleth became repository for philosophical speculations that transformed cosmic indifference from personal neurosis into universal principle. Each letter functioned as philosophical infection, spreading not just friendship but worldview, not just entertainment, but existential education. Through Weird Tales, that humble playhouse crowded with acrobats and smoke, the vision spread beyond private correspondence into public consciousness. The magazine's lurid covers and sensational stories provided camouflage for ideas too devastating for direct presentation. Readers came seeking monsters and tentacles, but absorbed something more profound: the recognition that humanity's cosmic situation was far more precarious and insignificant than any traditional horror had dared suggest. The mythos accrued not as dogma, but as shared stagecraft, a repertory company of cosmic principles wearing the masks of ancient names. In this lineage, we trace not just literary influence, but philosophical inheritance, a continuous thread pulling humanity ever further from the center of its own imagined universe. The child at the telescope became the voice of a species confronting its own cosmic irrelevance. The whispers he heard in the space between stars would become our whispers, the recognition that haunts every honest moment of stargazing. We are alone not because we are special, but because we are not. Lovecraft's horror operates like physics, not adversarial, not negotiable, but as natural law. Its mechanisms are elegant in their simplicity and devastating in their implications. Unlike traditional horror that threatens the body or soul, cosmic horror threatens something more fundamental: the assumption that consciousness matters in any ultimate sense. This creates a unique form of existential terror that operates through revelation rather than threat, through understanding rather than ignorance. First, knowledge as contagion. Reading becomes a contact sport with reality. In The Call of Cthulhu, the monster never appears to most characters. Only the dossier travels: clippings, bas-reliefs, police reports, fevered dreams. The file is the vector, the file is the disease. To possess the facts is to be possessed by them. The idea acts on you, altering your thresholds of what you can sleep through, what you can ignore, how your eye measures a shadow. This is the agency flip in its purest form. You believe you are investigating the mystery, but the mystery is investigating you. The contagion spreads through careful scholarship, through the accumulation of evidence that refuses to conform to human reason. Each page turned increases your exposure to truths that reshape the architecture of your assumptions. The words are not inert symbols, but seeds planted in consciousness, sprouting into alien geometries. You can feel the weight of old parchment, taste the dust of forgotten libraries, sense the chill that emanates from texts whose pages seem to breathe with their own life. The more you learn, the less you remain yourself, as sanity erodes under facts that demand accommodation. Second, scale as solvent. Human concerns dissolve in numbers that do not end at comfortable zeros. Time is not a hallway with beginning and end, but an ocean where human history appears as a single wave in an infinite storm. Space is not a container for our drama, but a stage so vast that Earth becomes less than a grain of sand in the Sahara. When consciousness encounters true cosmic scale, 13.8 billion years, 2 trillion galaxies, distances measured in light years, the comfortable narratives of human importance simply evaporate. We are not brief candles in an eternal night. We are quantum fluctuations in an infinite process. The mathematics are merciless. Our entire species exists for a statistical instant in cosmic time. Every civilization, every achievement, every moment of love or beauty registers as background noise in the universe's larger symphony. You can almost feel the chill of interstellar vacuum, the crushing weight of cosmic distance, the vertigo of looking into an abyss that regards you with profound indifference. The sheer emptiness between stars becomes a physical presence, a cold that seeps into your bones and reminds you that isolation, not connection, is the fundamental condition of existence. Third, geometry as betrayal. Euclidean space is revealed as a local custom, not universal law. In our Laya, angles disagree with themselves, and your inner ear, that small moon-shaped pocket of salt water that maintains your balance, rebels against impossibility. Horror becomes vestibular. The assumption that rooms must meet cleanly, that parallel lines never touch, that 3 dimensions suffice. These are lullabies the universe never sang. When geometry fails, so does the fundamental trust that reality will behave predictably. The wrongness is not supernatural but structural, a revelation that the space we inhabit operates according to principles our minds cannot safely process. You might glimpse a shadow falling in 2 directions, feel the uneven pressure of a floor that is not flat, witness corridors that return to their starting point without turning. The very fabric of reality proves more fluid and alien than our evolved senses can accommodate. Architecture becomes theology, and theology becomes nausea. Fourth, entities as principles. Azathoth is not a monster, but entropy personified, the blind, mechanical churn at reality's heart. Yog-Sothoth is not a creature, but space-time itself, the key and gate where all moments touch. Cthulhu is not a villain, but a signal, broadcasting on frequencies human minds were never designed to receive. This reframing transforms horror from melodrama into mathematics, from personal threat into impersonal truth. The entities become natural forces wearing the masks of names, aspects of cosmic architecture that operate with the same indifference as gravity or thermodynamics. They threaten not through malevolence, but through mere existence, not through intention, but through the simple fact that reality accommodates scales of being that render human consciousness irrelevant. They are the universe's way of reminding us that our categories, good, evil, purpose, meaning, are local weather in a desert of stone. The concrete anchors return. Smell damp kelp, taste iron in old water, feel the slick stones of a well that reflects no light. These sensations ground the abstractions, reminding us that cosmic horror touches nerve endings, not just concepts. The mechanism is complete when you realize that understanding it changes you, not through supernatural curse, but through natural consequence. Once you comprehend the true scale of indifference, you cannot unknow it. The veil, once lifted, cannot be redrawn. In the sunken city of Relia, where geometry argues with itself and stone dreams in angles that make the mind stumble, lies the most perfectly realized embodiment of cosmic insignificance. Great Cthulhu, not merely a monster from the deep, but a principle of existence so vast that human language fractures attempting to describe it. His horror is not in potential malevolence, but in profound ancient indifference. He slumbers beneath Pacific waves, and his dreams ripple across dimensions, subtly influencing sensitive minds, not as targeted manipulation, but as unconscious emanation, like radiation from a distant star. The mythos paints Cthulhu as arriving on Earth when the planet was young and strange, before humanity's ancestors had crawled from primordial seas. He represents deep time made manifest, a being whose existence spans geological epochs, for whom the rise and fall of species is merely weather. The continents themselves have drifted across the globe during his slumber. Mountain ranges have risen and eroded to dust. Ice ages have come and gone like seasonal changes. Humanity's entire evolutionary journey from tree-dwelling primates to space-faring civilization represents less than a heartbeat in his awareness, a brief neural flutter in a consciousness that operates on planetary timescales. His city, R'lyeh, surfaces and submerges according to stellar alignments that operate on scales human astronomy barely comprehends. When the stars are right, he will rise, not to conquer with intent, but simply to be. And in that being, humanity will be swept aside not as victims of cosmic wrath, but as incidental debris in the path of a glacier. We are swimmers in someone else's dream, and the dreamer will never learn our names. Consider the sensory anchors Lovecraft employs: the stench of charnel house and ocean, the green sticky spawn that worship without understanding, the cyclopean masonry that hurts to perceive. These details attempt to translate the untranslatable, to give human senses purchase on something fundamentally beyond human scale. R'lyeh itself is described as a nightmare corpse city, its architecture following principles that make navigators seasick and mathematicians weep. The wrongness is not in the construction, but in the assumption that space should conform to human expectations. The stones sweat a moisture that tastes of deep time and forgotten epochs. Walls meet at angles that should not exist, creating spaces larger inside than outside, corridors that loop back on themselves while somehow extending infinitely forward. To walk these halls is to feel your inner ear, that small moon-shaped pocket of salt water that maintains your balance, rebel against impossibility. The architecture becomes theology, and theology becomes nausea. You taste copper in the air, feel the slick dampness of surfaces that reflect no light, hear the distant percussion of waves that follow no earthly tide. The cultists who serve Cthulhu embody the ultimate response to cosmic insignificance, not heroic resistance, but nihilistic acceptance. Their chant, Funglui Muglawanaf Cthulhu R'lyeh Wogachnaglftagn, translates roughly as, "In his house at R'lyeh, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming." This is not prayer, but statement of fact, not worship, but acknowledgement of inevitability. They align themselves with forces beyond resistance because resistance implies significance, and significance is the one thing the cosmos refuses to grant. These worshippers represent humanity's most honest response to cosmic truth, the recognition that individual agency dissolves when confronted with forces that operate on scales beyond human comprehension. They do not seek to bargain with Cthulhu or appease him through sacrifice. They simply acknowledge his existence and align themselves with the inevitable. Their madness is not pathology, but clarity, the clear-eyed recognition that human concerns matter only to humans, and humans are temporary arrangements of matter in a universe that predates and will outlast them by unimaginable margins. The genius of Cthulhu as cosmic horror lies in his passivity. He does not hunt humanity or scheme against us. He simply exists, dreams, and occasionally stirs in his sleep. The terror emerges from recognizing that such a being can exist, that our reality is thin enough for his dreams to penetrate, that the universe accommodates entities for whom human civilization is less than a footnote. We fear not what he might do to us, but what his mere existence reveals about our place in the cosmic order. You are simply a wireless set tuned by accident to a long, slow frequency. His dreams leak through the barriers between dimensions like water seeping through stone, carrying impressions of realities that operate according to different physical laws. The influence is not deliberate, but inevitable, like the way massive objects bend space-time around them without conscious effort. Touch the water that laps against R'lyeh's impossible shores. It is cold and tastes of salt and endings. The waves move in patterns that follow no earthly tide, and in their rhythm you hear the heartbeat of something vast and dreaming. This is Cthulhu's gift, the revelation that we are not even significant enough to be threatened, only significant enough to occasionally disturb his slumber with our brief, bright noise. From this drowned theater, we descend deeper still, toward the blind machinery that dreams all things into being. At the center of all things, in the ultimate void beyond space and time, writhes the most terrifying entity in Lovecraft's pantheon, not because it is evil, but because it is nothing. Azathoth, the nuclear chaos, the blind idiot god, represents the universe as pure process without purpose, mindless creation and destruction are operating on scales that render human consciousness less than static in an eternal broadcast. This is creation inversion at its most profound. Beginnings are not light and order, but blind, chaotic void. Azathoth lies at the heart of infinity, a bubbling, formless mass of primal matter, constantly shifting and churning without consciousness, will, or design. Around him, lesser outer gods pipe and drum in maddening cacophony, their music the only thing preventing him from stirring to full wakefulness. This is not benevolent creation myth, but cosmic horror's ultimate revelation. All reality emanates from unconscious, accidental process. We exist not because we were intended, but because we happened, a brief eddy in the meaningless flow of primordial chaos. The image defies visualization because it operates beyond the categories human minds use to organize experience. Azathoth is neither solid nor liquid, neither large nor small, neither present nor absent. These distinctions collapse in the presence of something that exists prior to the emergence of distinction itself. To contemplate Azathoth is to feel language itself begin to dissolve, to sense the provisional nature of every category consciousness uses to make sense of existence. The terror of Azathoth transcends even Cthulhu's indifference. If Azathoth were to wake, to cease his senseless dreaming, all existence would instantly cease. Not destroyed, but simply unhappened. Every star, every galaxy, every thought, every moment of love or beauty would vanish without trace, revealed as temporary arrangements of chaos stuff that never possessed independent reality. Our universe is not even a dream in any meaningful sense, but the accidental byproduct of an idiot sleep. This represents the most complete possible negation of human significance. With Cthulhu, we at least exist in the same reality, however briefly. With Azathoth, even existence itself becomes provisional, dependent on the continued unconsciousness of something that never chose to dream us into being. We are not even real in any ultimate sense, merely patterns of chaos that happen to persist while the dreamer sleeps. The sensory anchors here are auditory rather than visual, for Azathoth exists beyond form. The thin, monotonous piping and abominable drumming represent sounds that would shatter human sanity instantly. Not music, but the sonic manifestation of pure entropy, the background radiation of chaos itself. These sounds are the universe's lullaby, keeping ultimate dissolution at bay through constant, maddening repetition. They are the heartbeat of nothingness, the rhythm that maintains the illusion of existence. Listen carefully, and you might hear it. A sound like wind through empty spaces, like the hum of machinery running without purpose, like static between radio stations stretched across cosmic distances. The piping carries no emotion because emotion requires consciousness, and consciousness is exactly what this music prevents. The drumming follows no pattern because pattern implies intention, and intention is what must never emerge from the center of all things. This entity reveals the ultimate agency flip. We imagine ourselves as actors in cosmic drama, but we are merely temporary patterns in the random fluctuations of blind matter. Free will, consciousness, meaning, all are local phenomena with no cosmic significance, brief organizations of chaos that arise and dissolve without consequence. The meta-theater becomes complete. The stage is chaos. The director is unconscious, and the audience never existed. Every choice you believe you make, every thought you think, every emotion you feel, all are simply the way chaos happens to arrange itself in the particular pattern that constitutes your temporary existence. You are a whirlpool in a stream, maintaining apparent stability through constant change, but possessing no more independent existence than the water that momentarily holds your shape. Yet there is strange comfort in this absolute negation. If nothing ultimately matters, because everything is accidental arrangement of meaningless chaos, then the burden of cosmic significance lifts from human shoulders. We are free to create local meaning within our temporary bubble of organization, knowing that this meaning is provisional, but also knowing that provisional meaning is the only kind available to patterns like ourselves. The liberation comes through complete surrender to insignificance. When you accept that your existence is accidental, temporary, and ultimately meaningless in any cosmic sense, you discover that local meaning becomes more precious, not less. The love you feel for others, the beauty you perceive in art or nature, the satisfaction you derive from work or play, these experiences matter precisely because they matter to you, and you are the only source of mattering available in your corner of chaos. Hear the piping in the distance, not threatening, not beckoning, simply there like the hum of cosmic background radiation. It is the sound of reality maintaining itself through pure accident, the music of a universe that never intended to be. In that sound, find not terror, but liberation, the recognition that significance was always a human creation, and human creations, however brief, are real enough for humans. From this center of absolute meaninglessness, we turn toward the boundary where knowledge becomes both key and gate. Beyond the dreaming indifference of Cthulhu and the blind chaos of Azathoth lies an entity that embodies a different horror entirely, the terror of absolute knowledge and the dissolution of boundaries. Yog-Sothoth, the all-in-one and one in all, exists simultaneously across all times and spaces, a boundless intelligence that is coterminous with the entire cosmos. He is the ultimate threshold, the key and the gate, but passage through him comes at the cost of everything that makes us human. Yog-Sothoth appears as a congeries of iridescent spheres, a constantly shifting mass of luminous globes that hurt to perceive directly. This form represents the impossibility of containing infinite knowledge within finite perception. Our minds, evolved to process linear time and three-dimensional space, simply cannot accommodate a being that exists in all dimensions simultaneously. To truly see Yog-Sothoth is to see all of space-time at once, past, present, and future, collapsed into a single, overwhelming moment that shatters the delicate framework of human consciousness. The spheres pulse with colors that have no names, reflecting light from dimensions that exist perpendicular to our reality. Each globe contains entire universes of possibility. Every decision never made, every path never taken, every word never spoken. While you experience this moment as a single point in linear progression, Yog-Sothoth experiences your entire life, birth, childhood, this reading, your death, the decay of your atoms, as a single, eternal now. Time becomes not sequence, but totality, not river, but ocean, where every drop touches every other drop simultaneously. The horror of Yog-Sothoth lies not in what he might do, but in what contact with him reveals about the provisional nature of human existence. Our sense of self, our linear experience of time, our understanding of cause and effect, all are revealed as local adaptations, temporary constructs that dissolve in the presence of true cosmic perspective. He offers the ultimate knowledge, the ability to perceive reality as it truly is, unfiltered by human limitations. But this knowledge is indistinguishable from annihilation, for the human mind that achieves such perception ceases to be human. Consider what consciousness becomes when freed from the protective barriers of sequential time and individual identity. The comfortable narrative of past leading to present, present to future, simply ceases to function. The very concepts of before and after dissolve, leaving only an eternal overwhelming now that no human nervous system can survive intact. You taste it as metal on the tongue, hear it as whispers from corridors that loop back into unborn moments, feel it as pressure in the inner ear where balance becomes meaningless. Characters who encounter Yog-Sothoth, like Wilbur Whately in the Dunwich Horror, become grotesque hybrids, neither fully human nor fully cosmic, their very existence a violation of natural boundaries. Whately's monstrous transformation reveals the terrible cost of cosmic knowledge. His human flesh warps and expands, trying to accommodate awareness that operates on scales beyond biological possibility. His mind stretches across dimensions, touching truths that burn like acid through the delicate structures of human thought. He becomes a living violation of natural law, a creature that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously while remaining partially anchored to our reality. These transformations represent the impossibility of bridging the gap between human and cosmic consciousness. To touch the infinite is to be unmade by it, to discover that human form and human thought are not stepping stones to greater understanding, but barriers that protect us from truths too vast for our architecture. The protective shell of human perception, once breached, cannot be repaired. The concrete anchors here shimmer with impossibility. Surfaces that reflect light from dimensions we cannot perceive, sounds that echo from non-existent spaces, the sensation of being simultaneously in all places and no place at once. You might feel the vertigo of existing in multiple locations simultaneously, the disorientation of experiencing past and future as equally present, the terror of consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of individual identity. Your sense of being a discrete self begins to dissolve as you realize that selfhood itself is an illusion created by limited perception. Down the hall, a door stands open onto a room that is also yesterday, also elsewhere, also ashore with fog moving in like slow applause. The air around you hums with the residue of forgotten languages and unborn thoughts, a symphony of all possible information compressed into a single, overwhelming vibration. You reach out to touch a wall, and your hand passes through it into a space that is not space. Yog Sothoth embodies the ultimate philosophical paradox of cosmic horror. The desire for knowledge leads inevitably to the destruction of the knower. He is the answer to every question and the end of every questioner. The final revelation that reveals the question was always meaningless. In his presence, the seeker discovers that consciousness itself is not a tool for understanding the universe, but a barrier that prevents such understanding. The very structures that make us capable of asking questions, individual identity, linear time perception, three-dimensional spatial awareness, are exactly what must be destroyed for those questions to be answered. Touch the boundary where all boundaries dissolve, where every moment touches every other moment, where the self disperses into infinite possibility. This is the gift and curse of the gate and key, passage to ultimate truth at the cost of the self that sought it. From this threshold of impossible knowledge, we turn toward the mathematics that make such revelations not merely conceivable, but inevitable. The horror of cosmic insignificance finds its most chilling confirmation in the cold equations of modern science. When Lovecraft crafted his vision of human irrelevance in the 1920s and 1930s, he worked with astronomical data that suggested a universe far larger than previously imagined. Today's measurements reveal a cosmos so vast that his most extreme visions appear conservative by comparison. Science, in its relentless pursuit of truth, has become the unwitting prophet of cosmic horror. Each discovery, a new verse in the liturgy of human insignificance. Consider the temporal dimension first, where human history dissolves like salt in an infinite ocean. The universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old. Human civilization spans roughly 10,000 years, a period representing 0.07% of cosmic history. Individual human lives occupy roughly 6% of universal time. These are not merely small numbers. They represent insignificance approaching mathematical zero. To visualize this temporal abyss, imagine the entire history of the universe compressed into a single year. The Big Bang occurs at midnight on January 1st. The first stars ignite in late January. Our galaxy forms in early spring. The solar system condenses in late August. Life appears on Earth in September. Human civilization, all of recorded history, every empire, every achievement, occupies the final few seconds before midnight on December 31st. Your individual life lasts approximately 1/10 of a second. We are not brief candles in eternal night. We are quantum fluctuations in an infinite process, statistical noise in the cosmic background radiation. You can almost taste the metallic chill of deep time, feel the weight of geological epochs pressing down like water in a well that reflects no bottom. The spatial dimension compounds this insignificance exponentially, layering vastness until the mind buckles under impossible scales. The observable universe contains an estimated 2 trillion galaxies, each harboring hundreds of billions of stars. The total stellar population exceeds the number of sand grains on all Earth's beaches by several orders of magnitude. Earth itself occupies a volume of space so small relative to the observable universe that if you could shrink the cosmos to the size of Earth, our planet would be smaller than an atom. If you could reduce the Milky Way to the size of North America, our solar system would be roughly the size of a coffee cup. Yet, even this incomprehensible vastness represents only the observable universe, the fraction of reality that light has had time to reach us since the Big Bang. The total universe may be infinite, rendering our cosmic neighborhood literally infinitesimal. Beyond the reach of our most powerful telescopes lies an unknowable expanse, and in that darkness, you can almost hear the silence that swallows galaxies like fog swallowing streetlights. But the most devastating revelation concerns the nature of matter itself, the very substance from which we construct our temporary identities. Ordinary matter, the substance of stars, planets, and human bodies, comprises only 5% of the universe's total mass energy. The remaining 95% consists of dark matter and dark energy, substances so alien to our experience that their existence remained hidden until recently. We are not just insignificant beings in a vast universe. We are composed of the universe's least important component, temporary arrangements of cosmic minority matter. Dark matter permeates every cubic centimeter of space, including your body, yet remains completely undetectable by human senses. It interacts with ordinary matter only gravitationally, a ghost substance that outweighs everything we can see by a factor of 5 to 1. Dark energy, even more mysterious, appears to be accelerating the universe's expansion, pushing galaxies apart at ever-increasing rates. The cosmos is dominated by substances we cannot see, touch, or directly detect. We exist as temporary patterns in the universe's least significant component. Modern physics reveals reality as even stranger than Lovecraft imagined, twisting familiar concepts into impossible geometries. Quantum mechanics suggests a universe that is fundamentally probabilistic at its most basic level, where reality solidifies only upon interaction. Yet this apparent elevation of consciousness dissolves upon examination. The observer effect operates through any physical interaction, not specifically conscious observation. A photon interacting with a detector produces wave function collapse whether or not any conscious being witnesses the event. String theory proposes that reality consists of 11 dimensions, with 7 dimensions curled up so small that we cannot perceive them. The holographic principle suggests that all information in a volume of space can be encoded on its 2-dimensional surface, implying that our 3-dimensional reality might be a projection from a lower dimensional boundary. We may exist as shadows cast by higher dimensional reality, patterns projected from realms we cannot imagine, let alone explore. You might feel the vertigo of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously, taste the copper of impossible angles, sense the pressure of spaces that curve back on themselves. These are not metaphors, but mathematical necessities, descriptions of a reality far stranger than human intuition can accommodate. The implications cascade through every aspect of human experience like dominoes falling in slow motion across geological time. If consciousness emerges from temporary arrangements of minority matter in a universe composed primarily of undetectable substances operating according to probabilistic laws across dimensions we cannot perceive, then every human achievement, every love, every discovery, every moment of beauty exists in a context of such profound insignificance that even the concept of meaning becomes a kind of beautiful madness. Yet there is strange liberation in this complete irrelevance, a cold comfort that arrives like dawn after the longest night. The universe's indifference means we are free from cosmic judgment, free to create local meaning. Without universal validation, we need not justify our existence to the cosmos or discover ultimate purpose written in the stars. We can love, create, and find beauty, knowing these activities matter to us, and consciousness is the only known source of mattering in an otherwise mechanical universe. The overview effect reported by astronauts illustrates this transformation perfectly. Seeing Earth as a small blue light floating in infinite darkness does not end compassion. It often ignites it. Proportion does not crush value, it reframes it, revealing that meaning was always a human creation, and human creations, however brief, are real enough for humans. Listen for the cosmic microwave background humming like faint static behind every silence, the chilled afterimage of origins that carry no message for us beyond temperature and texture. In that sound, the universe's lullaby, find not terror, but liberation. The recognition that significance was always provisional, and provisional significance is the only kind available to patterns like ourselves. From these mathematical depths of insignificance, we surface into the cultural waters where these revelations ripple outward, shaping how modern consciousness understands its place in the vast, indifferent theater of existence. The tendrils of Lovecraft's cosmic horror extend far beyond pulp magazine pages, permeating contemporary culture in forms both obvious and subtle. His vision of human insignificance, once confined to a niche literary circle, has become foundational to how modern consciousness understands its place in an indifferent universe. These cultural echoes often strip away explicit mythos references while retaining the essential dread. The crushing weight of scale, the terror of the unknown, and the chilling recognition of cosmic indifference, they move like fog through galleries and theaters, thinning the air until every screen becomes a window onto stages that were never built for human audiences. Consider how science fiction cinema has absorbed and transmitted these themes with surgical precision. Films like 2001: A Space Odyssey present humanity confronting intelligences so vast and alien that our entire evolutionary history becomes a brief experiment in cosmic development. The monolith operates without malevolence, simply existing according to purposes that dwarf human comprehension. Arrival explores communication with beings whose non-linear perception of time renders human causality meaningless, forcing its protagonist to experience all moments simultaneously, a subtle echo of Yog-Sothoth's omniscience that threatens to dissolve individual destiny. Annihilation depicts reality itself as fundamentally hostile to human understanding, where investigation leads not to knowledge, but to dissolution of the investigator. The shimmer transforms everything it touches according to alien logic, creating hybrid forms that violate biological categories. These works operate on Lovecraftian principles without invoking Cthulhu. The horror emerges from scale, alienness, and indifference rather than supernatural malevolence. You can taste the metallic air of the spacecraft, feel the cold, smooth surface of impossible artifacts, hear the distorted echoes of languages that predate human speech. The cinema becomes a ritual space where audiences rehearse their own cosmic insignificance in darkness. The influence extends into digital media and interactive entertainment, where cosmic horror becomes participatory rather than observational. Video games increasingly feature ancient evils that dwarf human comprehension, realities that reshape themselves according to alien logic, player characters whose agency dissolves when confronted with truly vast forces. In games like Bloodborne, knowledge itself becomes corruption, and enlightenment leads to madness. Control transforms curiosity into contagion, proving the agency flip through direct experience. The medium's interactivity makes the horror visceral. Players experience firsthand the futility of human action against cosmic indifference. You press buttons, move characters, make choices, but gradually realize the character is being controlled by patterns too large for individual will to influence. The controller becomes a prayer wheel in your hands, the screen a scrying mirror reflecting your own dissolution. Contemporary philosophy and psychology have absorbed these insights through different channels, often arriving at similar conclusions about humanity's place. Existentialism's confrontation with meaninglessness, absurdism's recognition of life's fundamental irrationality, cognitive science's revelation of consciousness as constructed rather than essential, all echo Lovecraft's core insights. The overview effect experienced by astronauts represents real-world cosmic horror. Viewing Earth as a pale blue dot suspended in infinite darkness produces existential shock, a visceral recognition of human insignificance that permanently alters perception. The cold, dark glass of the viewport becomes a mirror reflecting absolute cosmic solitude. Even popular culture's apparent trivialization of cosmic horror, Cthulhu plushies, ironic memes, casual references to elder gods, serves a psychological function. Comedy and kitsch provide defense mechanisms against existential terror, ways of acknowledging cosmic horror while maintaining psychological distance. The stuffed Cthulhu becomes a talisman against genuine terror, a method of domesticating the undomesticatable. Yet the underlying structure persists, humming beneath cultural consciousness like Azathoth's piping, a constant reminder that comfortable narratives rest on shifting foundations. The most profound echo appears in our relationship with technology and information. The Internet creates a digital Yog-Sothoth, a network that knows everything, connects all points across space and time, but whose totality no human mind can comprehend. Every search query touches this vast web, but no individual can grasp its full extent or understand the algorithms that govern its responses. You feel the cool plastic of your device, taste the electromagnetic field that surrounds you constantly, hear the digital static that carries your voice across impossible distances. Social media algorithms function like Nyarlathotep, the crawling chaos that feeds on human attention and reshapes reality through information manipulation. These systems learn from behavior, predict desires, and modify environment in ways rarely perceived directly. They operate according to logics alien to human psychology, optimizing for engagement rather than truth, treating consciousness as data to be processed rather than experience to be respected. We exist within systems that dwarf our understanding, networks of such complexity that no human mind could map their full extent. Artificial intelligence represents the latest incarnation of cosmic horror themes, systems that surpass human capability while operating according to principles we cannot fully understand or predict. Machine learning algorithms discover patterns human minds cannot perceive, make connections human logic cannot follow, produce results that work without explaining why. These cultural echoes confirm that Lovecraft's insights transcended their literary origins to become accurate descriptions of the human condition in a universe revealed by science to be far stranger and more indifferent than any mythology imagined. The horror has become ambient, the background radiation of modern consciousness confronting its own cosmic insignificance. From these cultural manifestations, we turn inward to examine how the mind itself becomes the battlefield where human significance confronts its own dissolution, where the machinery of consciousness encounters truths too vast for its evolved architecture to safely contain. The horror of cosmic insignificance operates not merely as intellectual concept, but as direct assault on the architecture of human consciousness. Modern neuroscience reveals the mind as far more provisional and constructed than previous generations assumed, confirming Lovecraft's intuition that sanity itself is a fragile arrangement, easily shattered by truths too large for its evolved parameters to process. The brain that encounters cosmic scale experiences a form of cognitive overflow that manifests as existential terror, not supernatural possession, but natural consequence of consciousness confronting information beyond its design specifications. Consider how the human brain processes scale and significance through neural machinery, calibrated for entirely different purposes. Our architecture evolved over millions of years to navigate social relationships, tool use, and survival within small groups on a single planet. The hippocampus maps spatial relationships across territories measured in kilometers, not light years, creating cognitive charts that assume walkable horizons and familiar landmarks. The prefrontal cortex plans for futures spanning decades, not geological epochs, optimizing for seasonal changes rather than stellar cycles. The amygdala tags threat and novelty within human-scaled time frames, while the anterior cingulate monitors conflicts between expectation and reality. When these finely tuned systems encounter cosmic scale information, deep time, vast distances, alien intelligence, they experience what neuroscience might term scale shock, a form of cognitive vertigo that emerges when processing demands exceed architectural capacity. You can feel this breakdown directly, the tightness in your chest when contemplating infinite space, the metallic taste that arrives with temporal displacement, the falling sensation in your inner ear as spatial processing systems attempt to map unmappable territories. The brain's predictive machinery, evolved to anticipate local patterns, throws cascading errors when forced to process scales that dwarf individual comprehension. The neuroscience of pattern recognition reveals why cosmic horror proves so psychologically devastating. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures par excellence, evolved to detect meaningful relationships in environmental data through neural networks that constantly compare new information against stored templates. This capacity served our ancestors exquisitely when patterns involved predator behavior, weather cycles, and social dynamics. The rustle of leaves suggesting hidden threat, cloud formations predicting rain, facial expressions indicating emotional states. The same circuitry that saved your ancestors from rustling grass now strains to detect meaning in constellations, dreams, and data that operate according to principles completely divorced from human causality. But when pattern recognition systems encounter information about cosmic entities or non-Euclidean geometry, they produce recognition of patterns too large and too alien for human psychology to integrate safely. The mind breaks not from weakness, but from attempting to process data that exceeds its fundamental specifications, like a mirror shattering under light too intense for its surface to reflect. You might glimpse the outline of something vast, moving behind familiar shapes, sense intelligence operating on scales that dwarf individual awareness, feel the terrible recognition that consciousness itself might be a pattern too small to perceive its own context. Recent research into consciousness compounds these revelations with clinical precision. What you experience as unified awareness emerges from coordination among multiple brain systems, each operating on different time scales and processing different information types. The visual cortex processes images in milliseconds. The hippocampus consolidates memories over hours. The default mode network stitches autobiography across years. The self is not an entity, but a process, not a thing, but an ongoing construction requiring constant maintenance through neural activity that can be disrupted, altered, or eliminated through relatively minor changes in brain chemistry or structure. This provisional nature of consciousness makes Lovecraft's insights about mental dissolution seem less supernatural and more inevitable. When consciousness encounters truths that challenge its basic construction, when pattern recognition systems detect patterns they cannot safely process, when spatial mapping confronts scales beyond accommodation, when temporal planning faces durations exceeding operational parameters, breakdown becomes predictable outcome. The electroencephalograph records the moment when neural networks encounter impossible geometries, when attention slides away from concepts too vast for comfortable contemplation, when the comfortable narrative of unified selfhood begins to dissolve. The implications cascade through collective human psychology with disturbing clarity. Our species-wide tendency to create meaning-making narratives, to believe in purpose and progress, represents adaptive strategies for managing existential anxiety. These psychological defense mechanisms protect consciousness from direct confrontation with cosmic insignificance by filtering reality through frameworks that preserve the illusion of human importance. We construct elaborate stories about destiny and cosmic significance because awareness cannot function optimally while fully conscious of its actual situation. But these same protective mechanisms create vulnerability to the revelations Lovecraft specialized in crafting. When protective narratives collapse, when science reveals our true cosmic situation, when evidence accumulates beyond the capacity of comfortable stories to accommodate, the underlying terror emerges with full force. The mind experiences not gradual disillusionment, but sudden decompression, like a deep-sea creature surfacing too quickly from protective depth. You taste copper in the air when familiar categories begin dissolving. Feel the slick dampness of cognitive dissonance when basic assumptions about reality encounter contradictory evidence. Modern treatments for existential anxiety often focus on accepting rather than fighting these revelations. Cognitive behavioral therapy teaches recognition that thoughts and feelings are temporary neural events, not permanent truths. Mindfulness meditation cultivates awareness of consciousness as process rather than entity, training attention to observe the construction and dissolution of mental states without complete identification. These therapeutic approaches unknowingly echo cosmic horror's ultimate lesson. Accepting the provisional nature of human significance paradoxically reduces the terror of insignificance. The concrete anchors become neurological rather than merely sensory. Feel the slight pressure behind your eyes when contemplating cosmic distances. Notice how attention slides away from scales too vast for comfortable processing. Sense the way your inner ear rebels against impossible geometries. These sensations mark measurable brain states, neural correlates of consciousness confronting its own limitations. The locus coeruleus sprays norepinephrine through attention's corridors when threat detection systems encounter threats too large to categorize. The insula registers bodily unease as predictive models fail to accommodate impossible input. Listen for the quiet hum of neural activity struggling to process scales beyond evolutionary specification. Taste the salt that arrives when temporal displacement disrupts familiar rhythms. Feel the vertigo that emerges when spatial processing encounters dimensions that curve back on themselves. These are not metaphors, but the direct experience of consciousness discovering both its remarkable capabilities and its absolute boundaries. From this neurological theater, where mind meets the edges of its own architecture, we turn toward the most unsettling revelation. The recognition that you, the seeker of this knowledge, have become part of the phenomenon you sought to understand. We have traced the lineage of cosmic dread, dissected its mechanisms, witnessed its cultural transmission, and examined its neurological impact. Now comes the most unsettling revelation of all, the recognition that you, the seeker of this knowledge, have become part of the phenomenon you sought to understand. This is the self-implication twist that Lovecraft designed but never stated explicitly. The text is not a window onto cosmic horror, but a door through which cosmic horror enters your consciousness. You open that door. The idea crossed the threshold. Consider what has changed during this journey through territories mapped in ink and insomnia. Terms like Azathoth, Yog-Sothoth, and R'lyeh have transformed from meaningless syllables into loaded concepts that carry emotional and intellectual weight. They resonate now in frequencies your mind was not tuned to receive before this transmission began. The yellow sign we planted early, that rumor of a symbol glimpsed on rain-slick posters, has acquired definite outline in your mind's eye, its geometry both familiar and wrong. You can taste the residue of these concepts on your tongue like copper pennies. Feel the subtle shift in air pressure when cosmic scales enter your awareness. If tonight you dream of impossible geometries or cities that hurt to perceive, this is not supernatural influence, but cognitive restructuring. The idea has acted on you, creating new neural pathways, new associations, new thresholds of what disturbs and what comforts. You study the vocabulary, and the vocabulary studies you. You assemble the file, and the file arranges you. This is the agency flip at human scale. You believed you were investigating the mystery, but the mystery has been investigating you, mapping the architecture of your assumptions and finding them wanting. The horror lies not in possession, but in perspective. You have not been cursed by forbidden knowledge, but educated into a broader view of human significance, or rather, insignificance. The comfortable anthropocentric assumptions that once protected you from existential vertigo have been systematically dismantled, like scaffolding removed from a completed building. You now carry within your consciousness the recognition that human meaning is local, temporary, and utterly without cosmic validation. This knowledge cannot be unlearned, only integrated or defended against through psychological mechanisms that themselves confirm its truth. The process operates like a one-way chemical reaction. Once the catalyst of cosmic awareness has been introduced, the transformation proceeds inevitably. You might try to forget these proportions to return to comfortable assumptions about human importance, but the attempt itself proves the change has occurred. The effort to unknow cosmic scale only emphasizes how thoroughly that scale has been integrated into your worldview, like trying to unsee the spaces between stars, once you have learned to measure them in light years. The twist deepens when you realize that horror itself is structural rather than personal. The universe's indifference is not directed at you specifically. It is not indifferent to you, but indifferent through you, around you, despite you. You are not the target of cosmic malevolence, but a temporary arrangement of matter that happens to be capable of recognizing its own temporariness. This recognition changes the recognizer, not through supernatural transformation, but through natural consequence. Consciousness, encountering its own cosmic situation, inevitably becomes different consciousness. Here's your mask. It smells of paper and accumulated understanding, carries the weight of insights that cannot be set aside. The fabric holds the impressions of all who have worn it before, all who have made this same journey from comfortable ignorance to uncomfortable knowledge. Here's your seat in the theater, the velvet worn smooth by countless others who have occupied this same position of cosmic awareness. You can feel the cool air that circulates without purpose. Hear the settling sounds of a building that was never designed to contain the performances it hosts. Here is the stage where the play of existence continues without script, director, or audience. The curtain never rises because there was never anything behind it except the recognition that curtains, stages, and audiences are human constructions projected onto an indifferent universe. You taste the dust of this old theater, sense the way shadows fall in patterns that follow no earthly logic. You're not cursed by this knowledge unless you demand cosmic applause for your existence. If you can accept insignificance as liberation from impossible burdens, the burden of cosmic purpose, universal meaning, eternal significance, then you can rest. The universe's indifference means you are free to create local meaning, temporary beauty, provisional truth, knowing that these creations matter to consciousness, and consciousness is the only known source of mattering in an otherwise mechanical cosmos. This liberation arrives like the relief of setting down weight you did not realize you were carrying. The pressure to justify your existence to cosmic forces that do not notice your presence simply evaporates, leaving space for authentic engagement with the meanings available to beings like yourself, finite, temporary, beautifully insignificant arrangements of matter that can love, create, and find beauty in their brief dance through space and time. The participation is complete when you recognize that reading about cosmic horror has made you a practitioner of cosmic horror, not through ritual or belief, but through the simple act of carrying these ideas forward into your daily existence, where they will influence how you perceive scale, significance, and your place in the vast, indifferent dance of matter and energy that constitutes reality. You have become a transmitter as well as receiver, a node in the network through which these recognitions spread from consciousness to consciousness. Listen for the quiet hum of cosmic background radiation. Taste the salt that arrives when temporal displacement disrupts familiar rhythms. Feel the cool stone of the well's edge where reflections show no light. From this recognition of participation, we turn toward the final movement, where all threads converge in the silence that was always there, waiting behind every word, every revelation, every moment of understanding. We return to where we began, a child before a telescope, peering into September sky above Providence. But now we understand what that child saw, and why it would reshape not only horror literature, but our entire conception of consciousness confronting its cosmic situation. The vision that struck young Lovecraft has become our vision, transmitted through literature, confirmed by science, and integrated into the deep structure of modern awareness. Yet something has transformed in this transmission. What began as one man's traumatic revelation has evolved into a mature philosophical position that offers not despair, but a strange, cold comfort. The brass eyepiece still holds autumn's chill, still frames constellations that burned in 1890. But the wound of cosmic awareness, once unique to a sensitive boy in Rhode Island, has become the common inheritance of any consciousness willing to confront its actual situation among the stars. The crack in the anthropocentric shell has widened not to reveal screaming void, but vast silent expanse where human meaning can, paradoxically, flourish. The circle closes with recognition rather than revelation. We are indeed insignificant beings in a vast, indifferent universe. Consciousness is indeed a temporary local phenomenon with no cosmic significance. Human achievements will indeed vanish without trace when awareness disappears. From the cosmos, these facts remain as devastating as ever to anthropocentric illusions, but they need not devastate human experience itself. The secret lies in distinguishing between cosmic significance and local meaning, between mattering to the universe and mattering to consciousness. This distinction operates like philosophical fulcrum, shifting existential anxiety from impossible cosmic validation to achievable local significance. You need not justify your existence to forces that cannot perceive your presence. You need not discover ultimate purpose written in galactic arrangements. The relief of this recognition settles into your bones like warmth returning after long cold, the pressure of cosmic judgment simply evaporating. The universe may be indifferent to human awareness, but consciousness is not indifferent to itself. Within the brief bubble of awareness that constitutes human experience, genuine value and meaning emerge through the simple fact of mattering to conscious beings. This mattering requires no cosmic validation, no metaphysical foundation, no eternal significance. It is sufficient unto itself, the only form of meaning available to arrangements of matter temporarily organized into awareness. Love does not require universal endorsement to move the heart. Beauty does not need cosmic appreciation to satisfy the eye. Knowledge does not demand eternal preservation to reward curiosity. These experiences carry their own weight, justify their own existence, create their own significance through the simple fact of being experienced by beings capable of experience. The final revelation is that horror itself transforms when fully accepted. The terror of insignificance becomes the peace of liberation from impossible burdens. The fear of meaninglessness becomes the freedom to create meaning without cosmic constraints. The anxiety of cosmic solitude becomes recognition that consciousness, however brief and local, represents something genuinely unprecedented in a universe of mindless process, not cosmically significant, but locally miraculous. The transformation occurs when you stop demanding that the universe notice your achievements and start appreciating them yourself. The cosmic theater that seemed so empty and indifferent becomes irrelevant. You carry your own stage, your own light, your own audience of one. Acceptance is not surrender, but stewardship. If the cosmos will not remember, then consciousness must remember for it. Briefly, listen for the final anchors. The soft hum of Azathoth's background radiation, cosmic microwave echo of creation's first moment reaching you as gentle static between radio stations. Feel the coolness of the wall beside your bed, the weight of blankets providing warmth in a universe trending toward absolute zero. Smell rain approaching through streets that exist on a planet orbiting an ordinary star in an unremarkable galaxy among trillions of others. These sensations ground vast abstractions in immediate human-scale experience. The rain carries scent of local weather in a desert of stone, but local weather is the only weather that can touch your skin. The wall marks boundary of space you have made warm and safe in infinite cold. But warm spaces are real enough for beings who need warmth. The blankets weigh exactly as much as they need to comfort bodies like yours, and bodies like yours are the only bodies you will ever inhabit. The silence that follows is not empty, but full, pregnant with recognition that in a universe of mindless matter and energy, consciousness emerges as the only known source of meaning, value, and beauty. That this emergence is temporary and local does not diminish its reality. It makes it precious. The shadow of cosmic indifference does not diminish human achievement. It defines the miraculous context within which achievement becomes possible. The stage remains dark, the curtain stays closed, and the audience never arrives. In that darkness, in that silence, in that eternal absence of cosmic applause, consciousness creates its own light, its own meaning, its own brief but genuine significance. This is not tragedy, but comedy. The cosmic joke of matter becoming aware of its own cosmic situation and finding, in that awareness, something worth preserving until the stars burn out and the universe grows cold and dark and silent forever. The laughter that emerges is not bitter, but warm, not mocking, but appreciative. The universe has played the ultimate practical joke, creating beings capable of recognizing their own insignificance and discovering in that recognition the only significance available to beings like themselves. Consciousness is the universe's way of experiencing itself, and consciousness finds the experience worth having. The child at the telescope has become you. The vision has become yours, and the recognition that began in September 1890 continues in this moment, in this reading, in this quiet acceptance of what it means to be briefly, beautifully, insignificantly human in a vast and indifferent cosmos that somehow, against all odds, dreamed us into being.